All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Jeremy McGovern. I'm executive editor of American Farriers Journal. We're trying something new tonight. Thought for you as readers, we do some little bonus coverage. Um, Spend a little time with the folks that we cover in the magazine. I picked Ty Garner for this first one to experiment with. I was fortunate enough back in December to spend a day with Ty. Watched him shoe horses for the day down there in Ocala, and thought this would be a good opportunity for things maybe I didn't cover or things you wanted to follow up on to go ahead and ask your questions. So, if you read the article, which hopefully most of you have, feel free to type those in at any time. You can put those in the Q&A field or even the chat field. We'll go through as many of these as possible tonight. Hi, how's it going?
Very good. How you guys doing?
All right. Let me start with this, Ty. Tell us a little bit about Ocala and what it's like to shoe around there.
That's pretty good, really. I mean, for the most part, it's for us, it's kind of seasonal work. We're here all winter, and then we follow our horses up north through the summer. For the most part, we have a couple customers that stay here year round, but yeah, it's good. Winters are great. Summers are hot and humid and wet.
How are things with the new equestrian center there?
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, yeah, a lot of horses this year. Super busy every time we had to go over there. We didn't go there probably maybe half a dozen times this winter just because we mostly do our horses at the farm. But every time we went there, it was a full house.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of an outbreak there in Ocala, but didn't seem like it's a major issue.
Yeah, no, I don't think. I mean, for the most part, I think they kind of got it detained quick enough, and they I don't know exactly how they did it, but they made it to where if you were showing there or showing at another circuit, say hits or whatever here in Ocala, that you had to kind of pick one or the other, and if you didn't, you had to opt out for 10 days or something like that, to my understanding. But it seemed like they took care of it pretty quick.
Yeah. So, going back to that day I spent with you, one of the things really, I caught up with you in the morning and we're going there, and you had Dylan working with you that day. Uh, One of the first things you said to me that morning as you're setting up is you got to take care of your people. How do you find good help?
Well, so I stumbled along Dylan. It was really a crapshoot, really. I mean, I just moved here and hadn't been here, but maybe 6 months or something, and was busy enough that the girl, the same farm you came to with me, said, you should really get somebody to help you. And I said, well, I've been kind of trying to look or whatever. And she said, I got the right guy for you. So he had worked for another horseshoer previously, and she hooked me up with him, and I called him, and kind of the rest is history. Really, he showed up, and the first day he was with me, I could tell he was a worker, and he was cooking at a restaurant or whatever. I think for his in between jobs, because the other horseshoer had let him go, and so he come with me for a couple of days, and I seen what he was capable of, and how hard he worked and everything like that. And so I offered him a full-time position, and from that day forward, I think it's been 7 years now that he just shows up and busts his behind, and kind of helps keep the grease on the squeaky wheel,
You know, and I mentioned earlier I saw Justin Galley on here, and I spent the day with him, and your practices are alike in that same sense of when you get good help. There's not a lot of verbal communication, but it's moving fluidly. How long did it take for you guys to set that up and build that, I guess, that kind of workflow between working on the horses?
Yeah, I think that's fairly important. I think that like when Dylan come with me, even though he had the background of working for another horseshoer, it was like learning my program versus the other guy's program. And so the first couple of days, it was just like, hey, I know you kind of know what you're doing, but I want to show you how we operate here, and hopefully you can adjust to that routine. And so I think some of that is depending on the person, but for the most part, he said, you just show me how you want it done, and I'll do it just how you want it done. And so I think kind of just basically kind of being right up front with them at first and letting them know, that we have our own little program, even if it might not be the same as what you were doing before. And I've also picked up things from Dylan as far as, you know, how he did it in the past, or some of his stuff. Just watching him, I've been able to kind of, I wouldn't say speed up the process, but at the same time be a little bit more efficient. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and he learned very quick as far as the way I do things. I mean, half the time he's waiting on me, I'm not waiting on him. So
I mean, like I said, it works well. And, the place we spent most of the time was at Clayton Fredericks. And
yes,
uh,
sir.
that's got to be a great situation to have not just a top level writer, a top level trainer, but someone that just comes, say hi, and then gets out of the way.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's been. Of course, at first, I wouldn't say it was like that, because I think he'd been through enough guys that, as far as horseshoers go, that he was kind of wanting to stand over your shoulder a little bit, and I wouldn't say micromanage, but at the same time, he's concerned. He wants to make sure that everything is going somewhat to where he can keep showing the horses and keep on the road. And so it took a little bit to build the trust and kind of be like, hey, look, we think this horse needs this, or this horse needs this, and I think building that trainer slash farrier slash vet communication is huge, because once he put his trust in us, he kind of just, like I told you, he says, I ride him and you shoe him,
Right.
and
Right.
as long as they can go forward and keep showing, then we all got to be doing something right.
Yeah. And I mean, he wants you get him old shoes so that, in case they're at a show and they lose a shoe, they don't have to worry about things. They don't want something overly complicated. You work hard to kind of keep these solutions for him simple.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I send all the horses with an extra set of shoes. Usually when we go to, if we've reset them once or twice or whatever, we will take them off, put a piece of tape around them, write the horse's name on them. They put them in the semi. And that way, if they happen to lose a shoe, it's very easy for them to go up to the official that's working the horse show and say, hey, this horse has lost a shoe. Nobody could find it. We looked all over, whatever the case is. And at least then they have a somewhat of a pattern to go off of, and as long as the horse's foot stays in fairly decent shape, they can usually just tack an old shoe back on them, and or every once in a blue moon, Clayton will even do it if he has to.
Yeah. I see a few more people have logged on. If you have some questions after reading the article, feel free to type those in. I see Todd Allen's logged on. I imagine that his
Right.
brother's looking over his shoulder to make sure you stay a little honest here.
That's right.
Your contributions from that day. Uh, that's actually a good point. Is it's a nice thing to be able to go around the country and see farriers. A lot of times will have a small group that it's not always Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday alone, but trying to find time to work within this group and bounce ideas off each other. How valuable has that been for your practice?
Oh man, there's a couple of guys here in Ocala that without them, I mean, when I moved here, I had a fairly successful business out west, and it was a change for the better for me to come here, and but not, sometimes just knowing the right people and seeing what they're doing as far as one state to the next, or even coast to coast, everything changes. So there's a few of them, Shane included, John Sly, a couple of those guys that without them, it would be fairly difficult to kind of get started down here and get led in the right direction, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if you're capable of doing the job, it's one of those things where, I've learned so much from those guys that as far as maintaining horses on the East Coast versus maintaining horses on the West Coast, it's a completely different animal. So
Sure, sure. And you mentioned where you came from, coming from Utah. They're in the Salt Lake Valley. A lot of high caliber farriers there. Probably the most recognizable name we mentioned in the article, Shane Carter.
yeah,
And the thing was, you got a high density of really good shoers, but not a lot of the high end horses. And
yes, sir.
you big change from Ocala.
Yeah, definitely. definitely. And it's one that, like you say, you got guys that are more than capable out there that I mean, they can do anything and everything, but just as far as the market goes, it's completely different than down here. So kind of the good horses are all taken by the guys that got a big name like Shane and Travis and Aaron and some of those guys that are out there. List goes on and on, but you come to a place like Ocala, and if your skill set's there and your work ethic is there, then you can kind of make it go at it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the horses from that day.
Okay.
One from Clayton's, you had some management issues. You went with the poly wrap,
Yes, sir.
and then kind of opted against that. How's that horse doing?
So we took him out of the polyvectorin wrap, and we shot him, I think, twice without it, and we ended up opting to go to like 4 glue-on shoes, just for the simple fact that he's qualified for Rolex and the Olympics. So in order to keep the horse in the best shape possible, and keep him going no matter what, we went to 4 glue-on shoes. Mike Landolfi come over and helped me with a different application than like polyflexes or aluminums or whatever, and we've had him in those for, I think this is the 3rd cycle the other day, and we'll do him right before he goes to Kentucky again, the week before he goes to Kentucky. And so far so good. The after we took him out of the wraps, his feet kind of deteriorated a little bit again, and it was one of those deals where no shoe, no theory. So in order to keep the horse moving in a positive direction and keep him sound to where he has minimal time off, if any, to stay in shape for what he's up against, then that was our option this time. And feet look great. I mean, they nailed up good the first time. The second time they were getting a little bit ratty again. So they did fix him up with some good, I can't remember the company's name that did the stall walls and everything, to where if he kicks the walls or anything like that, it's padded. He's got a nice floor built in there where you walk in there, it feels like you're walking on a mattress. So hopefully everything works out to where we got about 4 more weeks before we head up to Rolex with them, and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was something we didn't really talk about in the article. It's not just a case of nutrition or genetics, but that horse beats the hell out of its feet.
Oh, he's hard on himself. He can't be turned out. He jumps out of the paddocks when they turn him out, and then so he gets the TheraPlate, he gets the treadmill, he gets worked, and he gets hand grazed and a few other little things. But anytime he's by himself, he finds a way to try and self-destruct. So they keep him under tight wraps, and that's my nemesis horse. I think I told you that day. It's like, man, I've never met a horse that I couldn't just nail shoes on, whether we put pads and pour or whatever on, and maintain. And he's tested my abilities for sure. So,
well, and I think that's a thing that readers appreciate is, seeing those challenges, that it's just not this horse that, easy all around, that you got to put some thought into this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What glue-on shoes did you opt for with it?
So we actually did, because it's not necessarily that he wrecks so much like he doesn't get separation in the white line. It's the outer wall. So because of whatever lack of which it can't, I mean, they have a nutritionist for him. They have everything else for him. They're still trying to work on that, but it's like the outer wall just doesn't hold, period. So you can drive nails as coarse as you would like, and as coarse as you're brave to, and the feet still fall apart. So a lot of that is banging on the walls, kicking the stall and pawing at the stall and stuff. So we opted to do it's called a glue shoe, and cut the cuff out of the toe of him and just attach to just the side of his foot, and try and let the wall take the least amount of damage as possible. And so far, knock on wood, it's worked. It's actually worked. I didn't think I'd ever have an application for those things, but that's where one of those deals where you sometimes you got to pay attention to everything because it's definitely made a difference for him.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We had a webinar this week with Roy Verocay, who's a farrier north of Wellington, I guess, kind of in between Ocala and Wellington, and
Yeah.
he's a glue shoe rep, and
Yes.
kind of did a presentation for us on using those shoes.
Yeah, I should have went to it. He did a deal here in Ocala, and I happened to be out of town, and I should have went to it because like I said, I never thought in a million years I'd ever have to fall back on something like that. But there's a time and a place for just about everything. I do believe, I mean, to a certain extent. But yeah, they've definitely worked for that horse. And Clayton said he feels amazing in him. He jumps great in him. He's cross countryed him in him, and they work him every day and get his feet wet every day, and everything's holding up. So uh, hopefully that'll be the ticket, at least to get him through roll work on something after that.
Yeah, and you're someone with a pretty good history of competition, and people would probably think you're really you're really going to adapt to a certain way of shoeing, but you just said it yourself. Look for different ideas and being open-minded. Was that always kind of the way you approach things?
It's not necessarily, because I guess sometimes you get a little bit bullheaded or whatever, and you think that you can just maintain with what you got. And unfortunately, like I told you the day you were with me, these horses have to go every single day. I mean, there's no chance, there's no doubt that I mean, unless it's catastrophic, obviously they give them the time off. But all it is just not being able to maintain feet or whatever, they look beyond that, because there's so much money at stake, and they've a lot of money invested that they and competitively, that's what they're looking for. It's just like us, or I guess you, in a sense, like you have your job to do, and if you don't get it done, they'll find somebody that can.
Yeah.
So you got to work. Sometimes you have to look past what you think. Oh, I know I can do this, and it's going to work just fine. And sometimes you have to pick up a different approach just to make sure that everything goes the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah. I think
not so much for employment, but for personal satisfaction, and to make sure that the rider gets to go where he's supposed to go.
And I think that's the thing. A lot of maybe young farriers or farriers in different regions, they get an inkling of how much money gets charged in these horse centers like Ocala or Tryon or whatever, and
Yes,
say, boy, I got to get there and make money. But I don't think they realize the pressure that you guys have to go through to keep these horses in the ring.
You bet. Yeah, it's a good kind of pressure for me, because I've always been one of those people that's like, hey, look, if you're gonna work on the caliber horses that are here, or that we get to work on, fortunately, it's a good kind of pressure, because it always kind of keeps you in check. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what are things like for you now? We were talking earlier. It's busy for you now. How does the season unfold for you?
So we're kind of winding down a little bit now, but we have the big $1 million class this weekend coming up on Sunday, which will be the last day of circuit it hits. And then we have, there's another big class at WEC. And then everybody will kind of hang out here for a little while until it warms up a little bit up north. And then they usually will ship home, depending on weather. They'll go back to their home farms, wherever they're based out of. And that's when travel starts for us. So we try and take, if we can, those, we call them light weeks, but they're kind of normal weeks, where you're not working 7 days a week or whatever, and do a little fun stuff with the family and everything, and then start getting trailers ready to go north. And usually we make a trip up there. We drive a rig up there and take the trailers up, drop everything off, and then from that point on, we start flying, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly or whatever, to make sure the horses are covered until they come back down here next winter.
I almost wish you were doing this from your barn to show folks the buggy, but that's you got a young daughter, you got the buggies. How do you find time, or how did you approach it? your business to, be able to serve these clients, and especially a busy time of year, but still make time for what's important.
This year has probably been the best year as far as that portion of it goes for me, because me and Cassidy just had a baby, and so we definitely have devoted a lot more, or I have tried to devote more time away from work with them versus just constantly on the run. So scheduling has become much more important than it used to be, because that's the only way you get time off, is if you actually schedule around it, So we try and take at least a day every weekend and go do something, and whatever day we don't go do something, I work, and when we do, I take it off and go spend it with them. So.
All right, I'll ask you about another horse, and this was the one that was, I think, most interesting, and probably the one I think typically gets hidden from me when I go out on the road with farriers. But I think it's one of the better cases to show. We were at Redfield, and you work for them down in Florida, but also up in New Jersey.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that horse and the challenges you had with it on that day and leading up to that day.
Yeah. So he came in as a consignment type of a deal. People were trying to sell the horse, move the horse, or lease him out. And he came in with specific instructions that this is the only way he stays sound, and which is understandable, but the application that was on him, I mean, his feet were in horrible shape. And I was very straight with Darby and Emil both about, like, hey, look, I think this is kind of a Band-Aid, and sometimes we got to apply those just to get them through. But when we have the opportunity to make things better, we should probably do that before everything crashes. And they didn't have really any say in what took place as far as that goes, because the owner was consistent on making sure the horse stayed the exact same. So I got online and ordered the same pads that he was wearing, and we shot him that way twice. And each time I did him, unless it's a problem, I don't say anything. But for that particular horse, it was like, okay, I can kind of see where this is going, and I don't really want it to fall back on me or my guys. So I said, here's kind of where we're at. And they said, well, we still actually, we're thinking about purchasing the horse, but we don't own him yet. So they went ahead and had us do him the day you were with us the same exact way. We built all new stuff for him, put it on him. And I want to say within about 2 weeks, he wasn't right. And they had actually purchased the horse for their own farm. So they said, do whatever you think is best, to get him back to where he can show. And me and Shane actually happened to be there the same day, again, working together. And so we come up with a plan. We put a very simple leather wedge pad on him with just some rate and oakum underneath the pad. And 4.5 weeks later, when we redid the horse, maybe might have been 4 or 5 weeks, somewhere in between there, he had grown a pile of foot, feet were healthy, trimmed him up, got him shod. And he actually was, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think he medaled 2 or 3 weeks in a row right here in Ocala. And the same lady that's leasing him now is super happy. We've still been doing the horse, going over to her farm and doing it. And his feet look from I should take a picture and send it to you, because you've seen him when we were there.
Yeah.
And now you wouldn't even know it was the same horse. So
lady's foot must be kicking herself.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to, do what you think is best, and it actually works out. So
yeah, a simpler approach than, and I'm not calling out the product or blaming the product in of itself. There were these Doc Foles pads, and
Yep.
almost like a flip flop.
Yeah, kind of like in between a flip flop and a rim pad. In a sense, it just had a small portion that went across the middle of the frog, and so the frog was super protruded, and the pad between the sand down here and everything else, it was just rubbing the frog just as raw as could be. And we treated the frogs and with some Durasol and cleaned everything up. And soaked a leather pad in water, a little leather wedge pad, and put it on him, and just night and day difference. Plus, you've seen how much time it took to do those dock full pads where you got to cut the shoe and do everything else. And, it may have been working for a minute, but it's kind of one of those things where at some point or another, it's got to change,
Right. Do you have I guess you'll see a lot of horses come from Europe. What sort of issues do you have managing those?
For the most part, when they come from Europe, it's usually not that tough because most of them come over with just 4 steel shoes. If anything, it's just kind of creating the foot that you want and going from there. But most of the time, it can be just like here. It can be a little rough or whatever. But by the time you get 1 or 2, sometimes 3 shoe-ins on them, and you kind of get them ordered out the way you like them, they're not too bad. The horses can be a little funky when they first come off the boat, and they're a little nervous and everything like that. But we spend a little time with them and kind of let them know we're not there to be the boogie monster. And for the most part, they turn around pretty quick.
Yeah. The question here from a Shane in Ocala. You're wanting to know how much you put into that buggy.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. It's back at the doctor right now getting some more work done on it, so I'll let him know when we're done.
Let me ask you this as the last question for the night. I asked you about that transition of going into this sort of the high pressure stakes of Ocala, and how some people may not recognize what that's like. What advice do you have for people who want to break into the world of show horses, especially to get into the high level that you guys work with down there?
I would say if it were me, I would try and approach it similar to the way I did, if at all possible, and that is find somebody that works on the high level horses and soak it up, be a sponge, because in a sense, there's a kind of a little bit of a fine line there where you sometimes you can be creative and sometimes you're better off to just stay out of their way and kind of keep doing what you're doing. So in order to figure that out without getting yourself in too much trouble, let's go with the guys that have been doing it for a long time and understand the protocol, because there's horses that we get in that we're like, man, I would love to just revamp the whole thing. You know what I mean? And sometimes we do because we know it's for the better, but sometimes if the horse is going very well and you think that something would benefit the horse or something wouldn't benefit the horse, sometimes you just have to let it ride for just a little bit until either you're granted the opportunity, like the big gray horse where they said, just do whatever you got to do to get him back in the ring. And sometimes it might not be exactly what you think it should be, but at the same time, you're, if everything's going good, you just don't rock the boat,
Yeah. Is that the kind of environment where we've always heard, we always talk about barns talk, horse owners talk.
Yep.
What, can you get a bad reputation down there off of one horse that can set you back?
Yeah, I think word travels fast, very fast, especially if you're in the industry as far as the sport horses go, where if you're doing something great, it travels fast, and if you're doing something bad, it travels even faster. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that everybody's going to make mistakes or not have something go exactly the way they want to, but if you're professional and you own up to it, or you go back and take care of your problems, I think that's probably the biggest thing is making sure you're professional and taking care of your customers, because that's who's in all reality, that's who's taking care of you.
Right. I lied. I got another question here about leather. What do you like about leather? Do you use a lot of leather pads, and what do you like to put under them?
Yeah, so I would say 90 to 95% of our horses that are in pads are in leather pads, whether it's a flat pad or a little leather wedge pad. And most of the time we like to use either the soft Equipack or regular Equipack. Or sometimes like that big gray horse, we'll just put a little bit of rake and oakum under there for maybe a shoeing or two, get some foot on them before you load them up. And the big thing about leather is it gives for one, it breathes, you know, so they can get, even with Equipack underneath it, to me, it's a little better than like a vinyl pad or plastic pad because that doesn't sweat. And it also conforms to the foot and the frog. So even if you have a little pore under there, or if you don't have pore under there and you do a cutout on it, the foot seems to accept it very well. And it helps with any type of, if you got some protruded frogs or low heels or anything like that, where you're trying to get some solid in the back of your foot, the foot can kind of wear down into the leather where it cannot do that in the plastic. So it gives the foot a chance to recover a little bit.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank you, Ty. I had a great time coming out there. Always a good time seeing you guys down there, and appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.